think we're gonna have to, are we good, Pat? Thank you. So I think we're gonna have to forego the minutes again,
Yeah.
because I don't think we have a quorum with who was here, right, to even vote on it?
I don't think you were here, John.
I was not here.
John was not
John
here.
wasn't there.
I was here.
You were here?
Oh,
Brianna was here, so
We have three.
three.
Technically, if there was only four people at the meeting, right? It was just Kevin was
So,
the
yeah.
fourth, so you have a majority, I guess, to vote on that. The other ones would have to, everyone else would have to abstain anyway.
Yeah. All right. So someone wants to make a motion to approve the minutes of 2/20/24.
I'll make the motion.
Brianna, you got to
minutes?
second it.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Abstain.
Abstained.
All right, we
Thank you.
accomplished something. Yeah, look at that.
3:01.
Took us
What a
1 minute.
meeting.
Pretty good, right?
Yeah, pretty good.
Is that your first accomplishment of the day? Everything else flies.
Okay, so before we get into the meat of this, which is, I don't think this meeting's going to take too long tonight, I just want to acknowledge that Brian is not re-upping his candidacy for the seat, and just wanted to get on the record that, it's been my pleasure serving with you on this committee, and, it's definitely a loss for the town that you're moving on to new things, but I understand it, and, I just want to say that the town's been made a lot better by your presence on these boards and committees, and I know we're going to see you around a lot, so I appreciate it, and I know we're going to have to fill a seat. It's going to be hard to fill your seat, but I know I speak for the board that we really appreciate all you've done.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Going to have a hard time filling it, but.
I don't know about that. There's some good people out
And
there.
here I
so
am thinking of ways to try to rope you in to be the chair, and now, nothing.
I know.
But yeah,
Thank you.
Brian, thank you very much, really much appreciated.
It's been a privilege.
I wish there were more people at the meeting to hear it, but I know that this is it for you, so,
Well, hopefully my neighbor Kevin Spenley will
Yeah.
say something nice to me.
I hope.
Yeah.
We are next door neighbors. I roped him into this, so.
Okay, so, on that note, Pat, you handle all
Yeah.
the advertising and everything for that, and,
Well, most of that goes through the Board of Selectmen as the
Selectmen,
appointing
okay.
authority, so it's just through their admin, and they're at that
they
office.
handle that, okay.
So I'll talk to Aoife, who works with the Board of Selectmen, and see if we can get some.
yeah,
town
whatever
meetings
they
up
do, I
there.
just want to make
Yeah.
sure we don't. Do they give any amount of time? Do they allot any amount of time?
Typically, for an appointed board, it's kind of, when a vacancy comes up, they will just advertise for it. Before, obviously, until Brianna came on, we didn't have 7, but we had
Right.
more than enough for quorum, so I don't know if it was, something that was as actively advertised, but I think we'll probably want to do that going forward,
Yeah.
especially if we're gonna have some vacancies.
Right. And how many people are up with Brian that are not?
I wanna say, I think there were 4 people up,
Spenley was up, but he's staying on.
yeah.
Anyone else?
Well, John,
You were up as well?
This month, yeah,
yeah.
Are you staying or going?
going.
Oh, for Christ's sake. And, man,
I guess I didn't get my speech, huh?
I didn't even know. I didn't even know.
I believe Beth was the other person up, but I haven't heard from her. But I'll have to double check downstairs.
No-
Once I knew Brianna was
No
coming around, I
letter
knew we
of-
were all set.
Yeah.
No letter of, no letter of,
responsibility.
appreciation. I'm not gonna continue.
I sent it.
I think I sent it to Aoife.
Did I not do it properly? I sent it to Aoife, or sent it to?
I'll have to check.
Maybe
I know we
maybe
talked on the phone about it.
Yeah.
I apologize, Mark.
It's a surprise to me. I would have included
Don't
both of
worry,
you.
don't worry. I'm
Actually, I
just
liked it
joking.
the way it was.
Yeah. Perfect the way it was, nothing else in that.
Yes, yes.
So now we're dropping like proverbial flies.
Well, no, it's new blood, number one,
Yeah.
So I think I was telling Pat, but obviously my business is growing and it's taking up a lot of my time.
Sure.
But I also do believe in in general, term limits, you know, I've been around boards that have had the same people for 40, 50 years, and you need some sort of change, fresh ideas. I think a rotating board in any sort of politics is nice, and it does that. But on the flip side, we have to fill seats, so I understand that as well, so. Heard great things about you, Brandon, so I was excited to have you on to get you. I don't want to leave the board too shorthanded, but again, it's a great board and everyone works really well together, so,
Yeah, well, again, I hate to see you go, much appreciated,
of
though.
course. But I did say I do want to stay on as a volunteer for Main Street Live and things like that, so.
Great.
As did I.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yep.
Yeah, we definitely need the help, but beyond that, you know, it was great to have you, and certainly great to get to know you, and you're gonna be missed.
I appreciate it. It was great. It was a pleasure working with you all and a fantastic learning experience. I've learned so much from all of you and from a lot of how town business is done. And Pat, I meant to from you. The town's lucky to have you as well, so.
Okay, now that the bloodbath, am I allowed to say bloodbath after everything that's going on?
That was a timely phrase.
Yeah, yeah,
Are you referring to the auto industry?
yeah, yeah.
Making sure.
Yeah, right, yes.
Okay, so, so we have work to do then.
Yeah, I think, I think to the earlier point, really trying to advertise and get some new blood on the committee
Okay.
is needed.
And there's been no grumblings from Donnell or anyone else?
I haven't spoken to Donnell. I know he reached out. He couldn't make today's meeting.
And he's been away, so.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll deal with that when we have to. All right, so moving through this, it's very, very light tonight. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's a lot of discussion to be had on the zoning thing unless there are changes from last time.
No, I think part of the reason I put it on was I didn't know if we'd get a few more members who
Sure.
weren't available last time that had questions about that. I'm happy to answer any questions and go over it for this group, but I know what 3 out of 4 of you were here last time and we
Right,
discussed it
right.
then. The other kind of main thing is, and it's been kind of the focus of the past couple weeks, is the business forum. Right now, I would say around 55 in attendance.
Oh, great.
That's including who I imagine would be coming from the EDC as well as town staff. But we got one more day. I think we want to advertise for it and try to get the numbers up. I need to get the final count to the country club at least a week beforehand, so they can,
Friday.
actually Thursday. Yeah, it's,
Let them call you.
let them call me. But it's, we've gone through all the routes of just trying to notify businesses. I know Harry has done a great job of using the chamber's social media, as well as Sarah and Rick from Destination Downtown with their contacts, so.
Out of curiosity, you sent out to all the attendees last time, correct? Have you been able to track at all the
Same
responses
ones.
from that?
Directly, no. I mean, well, the listing that I use comes from the town clerk's office, from the DVA listing, so it's about 300 or so emails. I would say maybe 250 of them actually go through, but, from there.
Well, I was just curious of the actual attendees
Yeah.
last time. How many of them find value in doing it again?
Oh, yeah.
You know, that might be something to look at down the line.
Yeah.
If we're getting, an 80% response rate, positive response rate, then we're doing something right. If we're getting a 10%, then they don't see value as much anymore, so maybe we ought to, and I don't know where we are.
Yeah.
It could go either way. I mean, I have no clue.
Of the
about-
people that came last year, did the vast majority of them re-sign up?
So that's the one where I probably would have to cross-reference and see exactly who did. But at the same time, I think last year last year we sent out an email basically discussing what you're talking about. How'd you like that? Would you want to see this biannually? Would you rather keep it annually? Did you,
Oh,
was it
and
useful?
did you
I did
get
not
the data on that?
I didn't get really useful responses. I probably got only 5 responses. It was, I think I sent it out maybe a little too late after the fact. But if we do that this year, it probably needs to go day of.
Yeah.
What is like the
Before you leave.
Yeah.
what is the general like charge of the forum? Like, what is the intent? What is the goal?
I mean, I would say the goal of it would probably be to almost like a networking event as well as kind of a,
Yeah, it's kind of morphed, I think, right? Brian, you've gone many times, you've gone a couple
Yeah,
of
it went
times?
from networking originally, which is still a networking event, but it's kind of a tool a business can use to, we have these people speak on certain narrow purviews, so a business may not be able to attend a conference in Nashville, that's thousands of dollars on social media marketing, but they could come to the Walpole Business Forum, and there's gonna be 3 general speakers on marketing, social, email, and get that tool for them. Our hope is that it gives the businesses in town some sort of knowledge or some sort of, like, some sort of tool to help their business so they succeed.
That's great. And is it only open to Walpole business owners? Is that?
I think that's the,
The
currently,
invite
yeah,
list,
that's
yeah.
the theme, yeah.
But that doesn't mean if a Walpole has a Dunkin' Donuts location in Walpole, a franchisee, and he doesn't wanna know it, he can still come as a Walpole owner, and not narrow him out. I would say we err on the side of being more accepting to come,
Yeah.
but, you know, yeah, we're not gonna open it to other businesses in
Yeah.
other towns.
Got it.
And how many was the country club kind of expecting in terms of your estimate?
80, was it?
No, I think I had it around 70.
All right, so we're not far off.
We're
then.
not far
We're
off.
almost there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like the numbers to be closer to where they were. But I think even last year, we had a good amount of, I wouldn't say a good amount, probably less than 15 people that showed up that didn't register at all.
Okay.
So we did have kind of those people that just kind of
Yeah.
were walking.
That happens in every event on every
Yeah.
board.
Yeah,
Guys, show up and come.
but we didn't have a lot of no-shows of people that RSVP'd, yes, correct? Or did we?
See, that's the one thing that we didn't track that really well. I would say for the amount of people that we did have there, because we did have a sign-in sheet, that was where the number,
Yeah,
I think around like a little under 70 last year, like 68, 65.
that's good, all right.
People aren't committal anymore. They don't wanna commit.
No, but even if they are, they don't feel like they owe it to anybody to actually show if they don't feel like it.
Is it a free event?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's. Who's the speaker this year?
So we got 3 speakers. BJ Corey is a speaker with marketing. Kevin Martin is with Nerds to Go, and Leah Shalby is a
Social media.
social media food
Marketing.
influencer. So very excited. I mean, I think the last year's event was great. It was kind of a wide spectrum of different focuses, but this year it's focused really on marketing, cybersecurity, and I think that's
Is it gonna be streamed at all?
Um,
Oh, no, I'm just curious. I'm not pushing it, I'm just curious.
no, I mean, I didn't set that up to be.
I don't think it would be a hit, I'm just curious.
Okay, no. Do you want, I mean, I talked to.
No. I mean,
No, that was,
Well, I mean, it might be not a bad idea. I mean, that's a community interest type event. It's not like they're,
Especially the speakers.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
like they're, no offense to present company, but it's not like they're busting down the world with all the new programming that they have. So I think that a community event like this might be something they'd be interested in.
it's always an added benefit to send a link out, but even on other boards I'm on, it's not a huge, like, we get all this, like, oh, yes, we want it, but then when someone's at their business and they start their morning,
yeah,
they never actually log in, but we do get some.
yeah.
Maybe it would be, I mean, if it's not a heavy lift, and we could just, and he has equipment already,
So
we could
that's,
ask.
that's the part where, I mean, I don't.
Do the
speak for Pat,
speakers
but-
pretty much stand in the same place,
Yeah.
or do they move around?
They stayed up front last time.
Stand up front,
Yeah.
but-
So you have one fixed camera, and then you maybe leave that camera fixed, and then you, so it only takes one employee,
Yeah.
one engineer, to kind of walk around the crowd and get like what they call B-roll, and then put together some edit, not just for people to stream so they can get the benefit of the event,
Yeah.
but for us to advertise the event and cut it up in a way and edit it in a way that makes it look great
Yeah.
in an effort for the following year to get more people to show up, you know?
Yeah, no, there's definitely something we can discuss and have brought in. I mean, I won't speak for Pat. I don't know how the live streaming would work. from
I
there,
wouldn't
'cause
live stream
yeah,
it.
Roseanne was set up for that.
Videotape.
I would get as
recorded.
much on tape as I could and
Yeah.
then edit it in a couple of formats. One, to show the speakers in long form, on YouTube and on the website, and then do a couple of 15 to 30-second social media length videos to advertise the event.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Take
Uh-huh.
advantage of Walpole TV.
I'll ask. I'll definitely talk to Pat and talk to tomorrow over there at
Yeah.
Local Media.
All right, cool, good idea. Thank you, John. All right. Does anybody see a need to go through the MBTA zoning thing?
Only if anyone has any questions, and we have, part of the intent to put it on is if we had everybody here, we'd have more of a discussion, but if,
If you do, that's fine.
I'm just laughing if we're doing that in Norwood right now, and it's next week and
it's Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday's
Yeah, this
town
Thursday,
meeting.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Thursday and Monday.
My only question is whether or not, so everybody had to submit by the end of last year, all the towns, right? But is it public yet? Has it been,
So,
it's not like reflected anywhere, other than you have it here.
so what do you mean by, are you talking about
Like,
the rapid transit communities that had to submit in December?
yeah,
So
but,
it's staged in terms of what your community category is. So rapid transit are communities that have access to light rail, subway.
yeah.
They had a deadline of December 31st of 2023. Walpole is a commuter rail community, as well as, so we're a commuter rail community, and there's adjacent communities, which is a different category. Those two categories of communities have to be compliant by the end of this calendar year.
Oh, okay.
And then there's
That makes-
small town adjacent, which it's a population kind of question for smaller communities. They have to be compliant next year.
I gotcha.
So this is,
Norfolk was
So this
putting
is
up a
your
fight on it.
proposed plan,
Milton's
it's not,
huge,
it has not
Milton
been,
too.
what do you
I
have to
heard
do with
Norfolk
it?
is
I do have
standing up and
questions,
saying,
sorry.
"No,
no, it's a good question. So,
not
so
gonna
what
build
this
high-rises
needs,
in Norfolk Center,
Good luck.
yeah,
Have to overturn a legislative vote.
No, unless you're willing to give up the dough, right?
No, I'm saying in general, if someone sues and it's case law, that can be overturned. When the legislature passes a law, it's just tough to challenge it.
It is, but the consequence of not conforming, like what Milton's going through, is they lose their state funding, correct, on certain things.
And they're getting sued,
yeah,
You're getting
No, I
sued
didn't
by
know,
the
what do you
state.
mean, they,
yes. So that went to
their grant.
Supreme Judicial Court,
SJC.
SJC.
which
So
is the highest Massachusetts
Yeah.
court.
So the SJC now is looking at the Milton case specifically, or
yes,
They looked at-
trying to set case law to,
No, what happened is
Push
that
everyone
instead
down.
of going to an appellate court, the SJC used what they call, I think it's called like Sarashawai or something, where they can grab a case, such an important case. They don't want to try it in multiple district courts. They want to have one rule. and
they want to set a
the case.
precedent
Yeah.
in case law to stop the other towns from following
Yeah.
suit.
It'll be a, oh my God, I was gonna say bloodbath. It'll be a legal bill, it's just every town, every taxpayer, they don't want that to happen in every town.
I think that case too, I just saw an article recently, I think it's not going to be heard until the fall as well. So a lot of communities that are in this position that they're looking to pass zoning by, they usually your spring annual town meeting or your fall town meeting. So there's some communities that would certainly be seeing what's gonna happen in Milton and just trying to get an idea of how is that gonna play out. Unfortunately, or fortunately rather, it's kind of in a situation where no town can really kind of wait to see what happens. You have to go through the process.
Unless they file to have an extension on the deadline because of the fact that it's at the SJC.
And that may
So
happen, the
many people will
SJC
wait.
may automatically give a deadline.
Right.
To say, we're not gonna have towns with all this work, and then we rule differently. That could happen.
And we're not gonna make them commit to filing before the deadline, even if they don't want to, if we're about to rule on this,
Yeah.
you know?
And is Milton a rapid transit town? Oh, they have a T there?
Yeah, so Milton's situation is kind of unique. It passed their town meeting by, 2/3 vote very easily, so they had pretty good support at town meeting. They have a, I don't even know, John, you probably know the language. It's a referendum ability within their town charter, I believe, where they can take a townwide vote to reverse a decision of town meeting. And so that's what happened essentially. So town meeting passed it, and then there was a referendum vote that overturned that
We'd never
decision.
see that too.
No, that's,
Very rare.
Very rare. I think the more recent one was when the marijuana laws, where
no.
if a town meeting denied it or passed it, the town could do the opposite. That was the last time I saw it actually happen.
Huh.
Crazy.
That's crazy. But to your point, Brianna, in terms of like how that stacks up for us, so right now, the article that's before you was sponsored by the select board to be on the warrant. it's gonna has to go through the standard regulatory process for any zoning article, where it's gonna require a public hearing of the planning board beforehand, and the planning board will take a decision one way or the other on it, and then goes to the finance commission, same thing, and then it will go to town meeting if you know, the decision is to still pursue it going to town meeting. If voted positively by town meeting, in terms of how the compliance comes into consideration, we need to go through the process of how we would notify the Attorney General for any zoning change. And along with that, there is a whole matrix that, I'm probably using the word wrong, but basically there's a thing from DHCD, which is the state agency that formulated the guidelines for how towns create the bylaw. There's an Excel as well as a, for modeling to show how you meet certain density requirements, certain size requirements of like just, acreage. All that information is separate. So it's like a two-phase compliance process. One is the traditional route through the Attorney General's office for the zoning. The other is making sure you're compliant with the guidelines through.
This is all after the town, you go through the town process, and then you would submit this all at the end, towards the end of the year, once it's all been.
Before. So I mean, if it passes in, May, I probably wouldn't want to wait on it, but, if it needs to wait until the fall for whatever reason, we still have time hypothetically where, we could fill out all the required work.
You're kind of in a pinch in the fall, if it doesn't pass,
Yeah.
you lose compliance.
Yeah, if
You have to hold a special town meeting for another,
Right.
yep,
which would be a huge undertaking at the end of the year.
But if you commit,
yeah,
I don't know where Walpole stands on this, okay? But let's say Walpole is on the fence. They may not be. I mean, they've already done a lot of work. You guys have already done a lot of work. But they may, so let's just, for fun, assume they're on the fence about it. And if they comply with the current guidelines, thinking that the fall is going to be the time where everything's going to be reviewed to see if you're in compliance, that's what I'm hearing you say, right?
yep.
But if the SJC says, you know what, hold off, we're still looking at this, but we've already submitted, are we locked into that submission?
Well, so the SJC thing is really a separate matter entirely. So we would
Different fact
follow the
pattern.
process we would do for any zoning bylaw change where, you'd have to, submit paperwork to the Attorney General's office. The one change of this is because it's a two-phased approach with the state. I also have to submit the other stuff to DHCD. In the off chance that the Attorney General does not side with the state, or the Attorney General, the SJC does not side with the state and sides with the town of Milton, I can't speak to that because that's a town decision
And also,
in terms of
too,
why they want to.
that fact pattern is that town meeting passed it and then they had a referendum. So if town meeting passes it in Walpole, there's no referendum,
Yeah.
technically that fact pattern's so different, it wouldn't apply.
Well, it only applies if you're theoretically on the fence, and that creates case law precedent,
No, well-
which means you now, they're probably not going to side with Milton, but if they did, then that would give every town that was on the fence or didn't want to move forward, the ability to not do so.
No, it would give every town the ability
To fight
have
it.
To have a referendum, and if the townspeople voted against it,
Wait a minute, is the SJC looking at the referendum
well,
legality?
no one
or-
knows what the SJC
Yeah.
is looking at until they take
Yeah.
it. But in general, when you have case law, the fact patterns have to be pretty similar. So in Milton's case, you had town meeting pass it, referendum overturn it. If a town meeting, Walpole passes it, and SJC rules that referendum of the people of the town overrules town meeting, that's a possibility, right? You have a majority vote in a town. That still doesn't take away town meeting, Walpole's town meeting, or any town's town meeting by passing it. If one of these town meetings passed it, and then another town held the referendum and overturned it,
Okay.
then that would apply via case
All
law.
right, yeah, I misunderstood you. I thought that SJC was looking at
The
the
legality of
validity to
actually
fight it
force, yeah.
and not have to do it.
Now Norfolk's challenge, or the other towns, which I didn't even know about, you guys were telling me,
Rentham?
Rentham,
Rentham.
if they're challenging it just on the fact that they don't want to have that, and they're not gonna even go to town meeting for this, just saying we don't want it,
That's what I thought
if they,
Milton was
or,
fighting.
or if their town meeting doesn't pass it, so they say, hey, we've spoken for the people, then that's a different fact pattern, and maybe the SJC sometimes will combine these cases into one and say, this is the case, here's what happens, just not to waste time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that, I'm gonna speak very positively about this, is that the thought that went into this proposed overlay district with the steering committee was really trying to make as little of a drastic change from what is
Yeah.
existing. That
You can
area.
tell by looking at that map,
Yeah.
that that's where you went with that.
Yeah.
It's not gonna make a huge difference in Walpole Center, because Walpole Center's already started its progress towards
Walpole already
density.
has density,
Right.
it doesn't matter.
So,
Yeah.
but
The existing zone.
not that, I mean, we're not here to advocate for Norfolk or anybody else, but the fact is that I can see why some towns might be like, hey, wait a minute,
Dover?
Dover. And, you know, even Foxborough with where that train station is, you know, that could be a problem for them. So I was just wondering if there was a mechanism that kind of allowed towns that it really was not appropriate
Yeah.
to opt out, but it doesn't really matter because, you know, like I said, Walpole's already started on the density track, so I don't think people are gonna really notice much of a difference in Walpole Center and the
No, you're
greater
not gonna
area.
see the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
You
To
wouldn't
that
wanna see
point-
a Union and West across the street from the United Church in Norfolk Center. You know what I mean? It would be like, wait a minute, what's this?
I mean, it really would depend on how each town, I mean, there's 177 communities. A lot of communities are set up different. You mentioned a few
Yeah.
too. Dover, Sherburne, those Metro-S communities that maybe don't have the same infrastructure, the same type of center. I can only look at really what
Yeah.
Walpole has
And that's all
existing,
we're
and so-
tasked with anyway, so.
Yeah,
I do have a legit question though.
Of course.
Non-theoretical. What if what if the MBTA adds a stop in a town or removes a stop in a town? And we've already gone through this exercise.
So interestingly enough, Foxborough is a good example. So when these guidelines and this whole law started, which was 2021, Foxborough was initially considered an adjacent community. So their percentage of, I guess their density percentage and some of their numbers was a little different because they were in a different category. But with the Foxborough station becoming a full-time station, they were moved to a commuter rail community. So I think really it would just be addressed on a case-by-case basis. It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
In Walpole's case, and this was something to try to, have to understand, is that there is a category of what's called developable station area. So each community that, if it's applicable to it, specifically commuter rail communities, you have an acreage number based upon what your developable station area, which is that area that's a half mile from a transit station. Now, Walpole Station is the station. It's the only station that's really utilized. We also have, forgive me if I'm wrong, Windsor Gardens over in Norwood. It's in Norwood, but part of that half-mile radius goes into Walpole. It really means nothing to us in the grand scheme of things. It was an option to utilize that area. We don't need to utilize that area.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense for us, and so that was kind of an interesting look. So a town really doesn't need to utilize all of its developable station area, and there's different percentages about how much of the district needs to be in a developable station area. Some towns don't have a train station, so where are they going to put a multifamily overlay district? So,
I get it,
something
but let's
gets
say
rem-
Norwood, just to use an example, Norwood Central and Norwood Depot aren't too far apart. So let's say Norwood just said, and again, Norwood has no issue, they probably have already doubled the density around some of those stations, but let's say they decided to just squash them into one.
Yeah.
Is there a provision that
like they're now.
talks about that, or no? Like, no one, when they wrote this.
Yeah.
So in Norwood, they did do 3 zones. They did a depot, a central, and a Windsor Gardens.
In Windsor Gardens, yeah.
The depot zone and central zone, they meet each other.
Yeah.
But with credit to the town of Norwood, they realized that the depot district does kind of abut a lot of residential, so they made that one type of zoning. And the depot district it's downtown. It's really
Downtown,
downtown, so that's different, a little different, so.
There's also
So they
some.
meet each other. It's the same.
Central had that hospital at the time until now it doesn't
Well, it has a half-built hospital.
have beds.
Coming back.
There's also some like.
Is it coming back?
They-
Oh, yeah.
They stopped construction.
They
Stop.
Oh, completely.
stopped
That's why I'm
again
saying I
last
was
month.
surprised.
Stewart ran out of money.
Yeah. So no one's been there for
course they're gonna sell it.
Yeah.
It's a permanent hospital in a great location on by a train.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I missed that memo.
All permitted.
all
Someone's
permitted.
gonna buy it.
Yeah.
I guess a little bit to that point, when it goes about, if say the depot was gone and there was only Norwood Central,
Yeah.
Norwood, Windsor Gardens, there is some wiggle room. So like technically we had, I apologize, I'm blanking on the name in the moment, but there's the old flag stop station in Walpole.
Yeah,
Cliftonville?
Plimptonville, thank you.
Yeah.
Technically, that was part of a developable station area. It would never be utilized. It makes absolutely no sense to have that type of housing there. But because of that, our developable station acreage puts us into a category where we would need
kids
to have
take it to Boston.
75% of the
They still
district
stop?
Yeah.
minimum within that half-mile radius.
Not on every train.
So,
You have to
a
look
town
and
like
see.
Walpole, hypothetically, if they lose a district, they may, I mean, I don't know how much developable station area they have, but I would imagine they may have a slight percentage where, say, the depot goes in, 20% of that district that was within a train station is now no longer. Well, if they lost that developable station area, that means the percentage.
The percentage would change on what the other
Yeah, the
station.
percentage of compliant multifamily zoning would go down, so they still would probably be okay. It's not like they'd all of a sudden be out of compliance.
So if the MBTA decided that after that 40B is built in South Walpole, that they want to stop the craft train when it gets there too,
Yeah.
as opposed to just rolling right through Walpole and taking off, would that technically change anything, or does that fall under the adjacent to Foxborough?
So hypothetically, if that became a station, if this passes, it really means nothing because we're still compliant.
Right.
It would be hypothetically, if you wanted to grow it and move it, and now you have the location over there, you
But it's
can't,
not state mandated at that point.
It's not
It'd just
mandated.
be an internal town thing.
yeah, but you really,
Yeah.
No, yeah, I know.
yeah, but I mean, that's really not so much where it's all about. It's about meeting, obviously, those minimum requirements.
Meaning,
So-
giving the opportunity.
Yeah,
The other thing too is what people, I think a lot of people don't realize is because the zoning's there, it does not mean that after it passes, the lights are turn on, you'll see all these buildings. There's still a question of, can you build it affordably with the rents? Depending, sometimes they're putting in huge affordability requirements where it doesn't make sense.
I would also just add to that, I mean, that's the biggest, I wouldn't say misconception, but being able to try to convey this knowledge to people that may be not familiar with zoning is that it's really, it's a theoretical. It's giving you the option to, it's not a mandate to construct, and one, a town can't really control that. That's dictated by the market, it's dictated by a lot of other factors. Walpole is a good example. Our entire location, it would be redevelopment. So a lot of those locations, it's not realistic that you're going to see something that was permitted under our underlying zoning that maybe is at a certain density be torn down, and all of a sudden something different is going to be constructed.
Famous last words, I live in a building that was done with.
But that was,
Tore down the old brick factory building and built 196 units.
that's because the zoning allowed for it, but it was also it was a different use, though.
Absolutely.
So that
No,
was-
I'm not saying
yeah,
that
yeah.
it doesn't happen. I'm saying that, I hear you.
Oh, yeah.
And it
Yep.
is what it is, but I also, I don't know, my experience and personality tells me that whenever the state says, don't worry, it's not a mandate, you can bet the family farm that within a decade, it's gonna be mandated.
No, they can't. They can't mandate a private landowner to build
Yeah.
certain. They're giving you the option to build if you want to.
No, I understand that
It's like,
completely.
it's like Walpole Center, Walpole allows for high-density housing. No one's built it because the numbers don't make sense.
Well, because the state hasn't incentivized it yet. As soon as the state starts saying, we're gonna subsidize the purchase and redevelopment of these aging properties, and because the zoning is there, you need to meet this, so you're not gonna get this, this, and this, the towns are gonna really be incentivized at that point to go out and find people that will do that.
It's gotta make sense financially. No developer's
Yeah.
gonna,
Well, that's why the state will kick in money.
I mean, that's the one.
I get where you're coming
Yeah.
from, from a straight number sense,
yeah.
I mean, you have more experience than anybody in this room, but I'm gonna tell you that they're not
possible.
doing this for fun, is what I'm saying. They're doing this for a reason.
Yeah, but one of the reasons that this exists on the scale that it does is because of really the lack of housing inventory in the state that's been created within the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Walpole is a great, I've seen, there's been a lot in terms of change, but we're one out of 177 communities, and not everyone has really been pulling their weight. And maybe that's
No, I
not the
get you.
right term, but they're trying to find a way to gradually,
But towns that haven't
Have something
pulling their
that works.
weight doesn't affect that much. If Walpole overlays the downtown district, there's no more incentive to it may actually hinder someone if they ever have a affordability requirement. So it may
sure,
hinder
this
that.
has affordability
So
requirement.
that's where like they would develop a main Walpole Center. I'm not using that zoning. I'm using the Walpole downtown district zoning. I'll get the same amount of units, but it's a hindrance to develop.
But I don't have the
Yeah. And that-
affordability requirement.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a,
So they don't have to use, this overlay is not gonna be permanent zoning?
so that's the thing with an overlay, you can utilize the uses within the overlay, or you could utilize the underlying zoning. So if somebody finds that the underlying zoning is more agreeable with what they want to do, they don't have to use this.
They take pieces from both one, or they use one or the other.
They really got to go one or the other.
That's
So it's
fair.
not, so like this one for example, like in the downtown, you can do mixed use by right, but the calculation is a different, is very different in the sense of it's values based on square footage of commercial equal, your residential is 3.5 times the square footage of your commercial, that space. Whereas this is calculated at dwelling units per acre calculation. I feel like I've had this
No, I hear
conversation
you. I
once,
get
but
it.
yeah, we quantify this, the MBTA quantifies density. The way Walpole currently does it within mixed use in the downtown, it really just, it gives you here's the footprint of your building that you could utilize for a certain purpose. How you make it work is really how you can comply with the zoning elsewhere in terms of parking requirements, height, dimensional regulations. But a lot of towns do quantify density. And one of the goals of this, or not a goal, but one of the requirements really is we have to show that we can quantify density within the district.
Well, I hope you're right. I'm skeptical,
It's okay.
but I hope you're right.
I think a lot of people are skeptical, so
Yeah.
you're not alone.
It's not like it hasn't happened in the past.
It just sounds worse than it is, like forced high density zoning. What's high density zoning? Walpole already has high density zoning all downtown.
No,
Yeah.
no, but and if Walpole was in charge of it, I'd be like, yeah, cool. But once the state gets involved, then you start to raise red flags.
I
So
agree.
Patrick, I have a question.
Yes.
If I understand and heard you correctly, just because this might pass and this land is available for use, some property owner is still gonna have to go through the zoning board of appeals and everything else and comply with what the town's boards would require in order for something to get built. It's not like all of a sudden somebody come in and,
Do something unregulated. So this wouldn't have a special permit
Understand.
process. So that's the one element. It's a by right process, but all by right, well, actually not all by right, but because of the way this is structured, it's new development. You're building something of a certain square footage or something of a certain amount of parking spaces. You're still going to need to go through site plan review regardless. You wouldn't have an initial special permit process for the use. So by right, really, it doesn't mean you,
Go to inspector. You wouldn't go right to inspector and say, here's my permit.
exactly, yeah, that's.
there is some sort of check and balance here.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I think that's it. Anyone has any questions, I can.
Did you want to talk about the vacancy and business recruitment?
Oh, that was
Yeah.
my request.
Yeah.
I think it's the one thing that's always kind of sat sometimes in the forefront of my head and most of the time in the back of my thought process, but so many other towns have a dedicated person that is out selling the town to prospective corporate entities, business people, come to Walpole, here's why you want to come to Walpole, here's what we got to offer. I'm not sure Walpole has that person from an outgoing standpoint. I know that there are people, if someone called you
Yeah.
from Siemens and said, hey, we're thinking of relocating here, you'd be perfect. But you're not out selling to them like Franklin is, like Norwood is, like these other towns are.
Nords.
Well, you know what I mean. I'm using
Yeah.
them as an
My
example.
friend does it for Marlboro. My friend does that for
Yeah,
Marlboro, basically.
exactly. Well, Marlboro is a little different.
It's a different entity.
They've got a
but
private.
yes.
So not
EDC.
every community does that type of business or community. That's usually a larger municipality. And I
Oh,
know
that's what
from being
Franklin
in
did.
Norwood-
Franklin got EMC because of that. they had someone selling it, and
I think it's tough,
those are the
Brian,
exact
and
details.
sometimes, and Norwood and Walpole actually both in this category, is that some of the landowners are just not motivated. We have people that just, some people, landowners don't care. And it's kind of scary, like, there are some properties in Walpole Center and Norwood Center that the landowner just, they own them forever and they're not
Yeah.
motivated. It's kind of sad.
it is.
But it's tough. I don't know the answer, Mark, and it is a valid point. I don't know the answer to fix that, but I agree with 100%. What can we do? Like, you know, it's tough. You're gonna get a big chain to come in with no parking, no drive-through retail? I don't know.
Well, I don't know, I'm
Restaurants.
talking more corporate, like, I'll use the Franklin example. They had a bunch of woods that is now EMC, you know?
Oh, you're talking about down, I thought you were talking about downtown, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have to have that land available.
Well, you do, but but we still have,
You also,
we still have available,
I see what you're saying. I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
I'm talking more in a global sense, like,
Yeah.
here's Walpole, we're selling Walpole. I'm whatever the title is, community director, or someone that's going out
So-
and selling the town.
there are communities that do have
Why does
that, but I
Starbucks go
knew,
somewhere and not somewhere else? I don't mean literally Walpole and literally Starbucks. I just mean in a global sense. Why are they making those decisions?
from a market perspective, a lot of that's done
But if they don't know-
privately.
If they don't know, then it's hard to, and I guarantee you that, yes, the market perspective is there, but when they hire a private company to go do that, and one town is talking to that person that they hired to go do that and saying, here's why you gotta come to Walpole. We're gonna do this, this, and this
As
for
in they
you.
reach out to the town?
No, the
The town
town-
reaches out to them.
If I understand you right, it's a town employee that's tasked with basically being for all intents and purposes, some sort of a broker, commercial real estate agent, and trying to grab businesses to say, here are the pluses of doing business in Walpole. Here are some parcels available.
Here's what we can do for you if you wanna
Well,
come here.
we, meaning the town can only do if they own the land. They can't do it if
It's a private
landowner.
landowner.
No. I'm talking about parcels that are available,
That the town owns?
or that the person that we're talking about knows that the owner of the land is looking to do something with that. And
What's interesting need to happen versus giving it to a commercial broker to say, hey, rent or sell my land. And the commercial broker books it on LoopNet, all these different avenues, sends it out to all the big retailers. Is there,
I get that, except for now if you're on there, because you have to be, right?
Yeah, totally.
Industry standard. But then someone from Walpole is also reaching out saying, look, we have this property, this property, this property. You know, we understand, and once they get looped into the commercial world,
Yeah.
if you will, they will know that, Hewlett Packard is bringing in 2,500 workers from New Hampshire and they're relocating to Massachusetts. I'm making that up. But this person would know that, and they would say, here's why you want to come to Walpole.
to tell you the truth, I don't know enough about that process to say that person's job, like you said to your friend in Marlboro. I don't know how they get access information. I'm sure they do. Like when GE moved to Boston,
Yeah.
they were in talks with the mayor to get tax break. I get
That's
that.
a
There is a
of it.
lot of the middle ground
How
between the
that
state.
works.
So you mentioned Franklin. I don't know the exact situation, but I do know from being in Norwood. Similar situation. Moderna was different. They just kind of like came in. But there was a process where you do work with the state, and if they do have a larger company, like a Biomed or something like that, sometimes they will approach towns about, what does your town have? What can your town provide?
Tax.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that has to be discussed and handled separately. And honestly, you mentioned tax breaks. Really, for a larger corporation, that's usually your main recruitment tool as a community. Is, well, I can offer you a TIF. That's really it in terms of.
Well, it's not it, because, not trying to disparage any town,
Yeah.
but I guarantee you Taunton is going to give more tax breaks to a company than Walpole will, but
I mean, bigger communities that do have community development block grant funding that's available on a yearly basis. So like Attleboro, Taunton, those are larger communities, but they're at a certain income level. They're at a certain size
What I'm
level.
saying is, the company would rather come to a different town, maybe. I'm not saying they definitely would want to, but all you need to do is look at a flyover of Route 20 west of 495, 20 years ago in Marlboro, and look at it now, and you can't tell me there's not a benefit for having a person like that. Your friend is a perfect example. They went from woods on both sides of Route 20 to, how many hotels are there now? I mean, it's incredible.
We don't want to talk about that.
Hotels.
The one that the
can't
town
build
shot
one
down, we,
3 times?
that's a joke to me, but.
Applebee's?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's awful. But regardless of that,
that's an internal problem with us, though.
right, that's a Walpole problem.
Let's fix that first,
Has many
actually.
chapters.
Should we fix that first?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And,
Well,
and
this
again,
is town.
this is something that's always in the back of my mind,
Yeah.
and when you see things developing in other areas, I am telling you right now that it is not these companies reaching out to the town nearly as much as they are reaching out to the person that has already contacted them about the town. And they want to explore that further. And then it goes to you.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a little bit of a differing opinion on that, just because of talking to neighboring communities. It's
sure.
really not something that is done to that level
Okay.
in this around here. I mean, it is done. I had experienced when I was an intern back in the day working for Springfield, and they had a whole different department, but it was Springfield. It was
To your point, Marlboro, I think I think their EDC is actually a private company, isn't it? Or a quasi-public
Yeah, it's
private?
quasi.
Yeah,
I think Mansfield's like that too.
yeah.
Yeah, you have to have like a really pro-development landscape to be working in too. Like they're a much larger,
Yeah, they had a lot of open
Yeah.
space to deal with.
I don't think Walpole would be thrilled
Yeah.
if we were bringing, I don't know, knocking down a bunch of trees and
Yeah, throwing an Amazon.
throwing an Amazon, yeah.
Want to bet.
But
In
I
the,
did
in the
want-
right areas. If you
Where
do
they
it-
should
if you
put it,
do
right
on-
at the
if you-
prison.
If
they
you do
should
it on
have.
Route 1, and these places where there's not a lot of housing around it, and they can lower the tax base for the town,
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe it would be a vibe, people like it, I'm not sure.
But, right, if you could,
Route 1 is really, honestly, probably the most viable location in terms
Absolutely.
of where it works.
Underutilized.
Yeah.
you
And
were,
1A now.
you had mentioned that you were looking at, you had a grant program for like you guys were looking at the commercial and industrial zone.
Yeah, that was, so that's more or less a planning initiative. So, MAPC is our regional planning agency, that Walpole falls in their jurisdiction. And so they have a technical assistance program, they run yearly. And so they were, honestly, approached me and Lauren. I wasn't initially planning of it, but it is a project that is, discussed in our master plan. And it's something that just from the standpoint of, we have commercial, industrial, limited manufacturing zoning. How best is it utilized? Is it practical for today's market? Is the location make sense? Do the current locations need to be expanded, put in different areas of town? Does the highway business district have the best uses possible for, which is mentioned in terms of being attractive to potential developers? Sometimes, beyond TIFs, it's your zoning too. Is your zoning, yeah, I think most developers want to have a very, as seamless as possible permitting process. So by right projects, maybe a little bit more relaxation and on some dimensional regulations. That's probably one of the more low-hanging fruit, beneficial type of things the town can do, is try to incentivize different areas by the zoning. So that project, they reached out to Lauren and I think last week, to go over budgeting for that. So I think it's moving in the right direction. The way they do it, though, they like to have it. They like to have their grant program kind of like lumped in with a different grant program. So they try to find additional source of revenue to make the project a little more worthwhile. So we'll look at it's through the EEA. They have different planning grants, and so I may try to look at something like that to supplement the cost of the project. But right now, I can't say whether or not we even have it. I think it's moving in the right direction. And that would be, I think a useful study, I think, for sure.
Has anyone come across your desk as even exploring some of the downtown vacancies, like at Union West or the other apartment building there?
No joke, since I've been here, dozens of people have asked and reached out in terms of not just there, but just in terms of what you mentioned, I didn't reach out to them, but they did reach out to me in terms of looking for locations, and we have tried to play the middleman as well as possible, but I'm not a commercial real estate agent or broker, so I can only really just, you can talk to this property.
So you make the connection and then most of the time, well, all the time,
Yeah.
it doesn't really get very far.
Yeah, because that's the end of it, where it's a private
Yeah.
matter.
No, I
The
get
town
it.
can't really
Well, it
dictate what
does.
somebody
I've had
does.
the town of
Yep.
Norwood call me and say, hey, this guy wanted to rent some space.
Yep.
And I call the guy and we talk about locations, and I may not have one, but I say, hey, my friend over there has a location over there,
Right.
and it does lead sometimes
Yeah,
Yeah,
to a tenant or.
I'm sure that's how the
for sure.
Muffin House found where
Yeah.
they are,
So excited for
yeah.
that.
Why is that delayed?
I think they had supply chain issues. Some of their,
Muffins.
no, just some of their
I
equipment.
hope they make
flour.
fresh.
That'd be a problem.
I don't know for a fact, but I don't know where I heard that.
Probably electrical.
Same thing that Rita's ran into.
Everything's
Yeah.
electric right now.
Same
Painful.
thing Rita's ran into. They couldn't get their equipment fast enough from the manufacturer.
Yeah, well, from COVID, that still can be a problem in some cases.
I don't know
Yeah, it's
exactly, but,
electrical.
75 weeks for S&C gear.
really? For electrical?
That's an
Yeah,
electrical,
crazy.
yeah,
Still.
Eversource gear.
I ordered my transformer in July of 2022 in Wareham for a location I opened, and I got it in October of 2023.
Yeah, they're quoting those at like 52 weeks right now, transformer, big transformer.
You work for Eversource?
I do not. I bug
52
them
weeks,
regularly
that's
to get
probably,
what I need.
that's probably half the time of what it was a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
A year.
Yeah. Generators are still much longer than that, but, and the S&C
And the
gears.
big ones, you know, the big, huge ones that they have to like tear down bridges to transport around, they're a decade out.
Probably.
So much for redoing the grid, right?
I know. Do we want to discuss the Main Street Live initial discussion at all? I saw number 2 on there, or
Yeah, I don't think so, only because
the no?
we don't have most of the people here that,
Okay.
and that's really an all hands on deck type thing. Other than the date,
Yeah,
Do we have the date?
I mean hypothetically,
hypothetically, the third Friday in September.
so what is that? That is,
The 20th, you're saying?
yeah,
That late, huh?
yeah.
Well,
I do want to also just kind of, on the whole future business about commercial vacancies, another thing that I do see communities do, and I'm not sure if Norwood has this, I know they have videos or whatever for recruitment, but towns will have like a standalone economic development page.
yeah.
And I know Walpole had that flyer, I don't know how old that is, I remember Ken gave me a bunch of copies. That's something that I have asked Lauren, we're gonna look into that in terms of trying to find out what other towns have, what's the general cost, what's a year-to-year maintenance cost for running in a separate standalone economic development website. Because I do know some, besides just general town demographics and like, hey, why should you come to Walpole? They will work with a third party to show commercial vacancies. I don't know, truthfully, I just know from looking at and I think Foxborough has something, Mansfield has as a page as well, but like, that's
Could
probably
you-
an option to look into.
Could you ever throw an event at one of like the vacant locations?
Yeah, I mean, that would be something to work with the private property owner, but there is,
Free advertisement, like,
yeah, they do, I'm blanking on the word, but, like pop-ups are kind of definitely a trendy thing that was happening for a lot of.
Or-
Yeah,
even a food truck or whatever, and set up tables and
yeah. No, that's a,
balloon arch, call it a day.
Balloon Arch.
Gotta have a balloon arch.
Yep. But we'll look into that and see if we can come back to the committee and have an idea of what type of websites are out there, and that might be a helpful
Okay.
recruitment tool.
You know, the word behind, the motivation and word behind all of this is relevance, Christ, this word always stumps me. Being relevant.
Yes.
And we are always walking the top of the fence on whether we are or not. And the more, the board,
Yeah.
this board. And the more we stay neutral or ineffective, the more I start to feel like we're just a party planning organization. So I really want to try to find some way for us, even if we're tasked to do more,
Yep.
find a way for us to have an impact, other than just,
Mark, are you saying to have more a legislative authority versus just advisory.
whatever that impact is, even if we could
I kind of tend to
help.
agree with you.
You know what I mean? And it seems now that even our opinions, while they're well thought out on our end,
Yeah.
I don't know how impactful they are when they get to the select board or the planning board or whatever. I'm sure they consider them, but I don't think that we're going to be changing anyone's mind. So I think there has to be other ways that this board can be more positively impactful to the town. And so when I ask for things like that and whatnot, that's my goal, is to just find ways for us to put out either information or drive results or drive outcomes to things that are gonna help the town from an economic development standpoint.
Absolutely.
And it can't just be, you know, a September party, you know?
Mark, man, I think a good way to start is, what we're doing is the rezoning of Route 1.
Yeah,
It kind of, let's do that first and see what the market does, how the market reacts. I mean, when a developer wants to come in and build a hotel in a perfect location with not one residential neighbor, and that gets shot down, that's a zoning problem, not a business in town Walpole. I mean, business in town
well,
problem.
yeah, that's, it's nice that you call it a zoning problem. It's a
But it is.
zoning board of appeals problem.
But it is though, because if the zoning calls for that kind of project to go in front of the Board of Appeals, that's a zoning problem.
And you can't always control, you can't control how the board is going to decide on a project, but you can try to make, I guess, the groundwork, which is that zoning from which, you know, they need to work within, you know, workable and accommodating to having economic development.
Yeah.
So
I
something
agree with
like that, I think that was on height, and I don't even.
It was
I
on
wasn't-
height, but it was really on water.
But it wasn't on water. That was
Well,
only,
that's,
that was only,
like my dad always used to say, the arrow that shot's not always the arrow that killed you.
from what I understand, and this is where I don't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
There was a thought that, they'll use a lot of water, just like any other business would use water, just like a house would use water.
Except for the standpipe was on the Sharon side, coming from Walpole Water. They didn't want that, because they thought Sharon was gonna steal the water from it.
That was the reasoning?
That was one of the reasons, that was one of the big
But
hiccups.
if you make those projects by right, something like that, on that zone, by right doesn't mean they can just, again, go to the building inspector and submit their project.
they have to follow the
go in front
rules.
of planning board
Yeah.
and follow the planning board rules and the site plan review and all that, which still gives,
So a lot of that, it kind of rolls into, you know, obviously trying to have that more subject matter expert study, which would be the MAPC thing, looking into commercial and industrial properties. But where our also main focus, and this is something that I was, you know, really aware of when I got here, is just a zoning audit and recodification process entirely. And that's something that's definitely not gonna happen overnight, but it is something that I think most communities, if they don't do it and they just accumulate and they rip and they take out and they add and they don't make sure their zoning is efficient, readable, consistent, then you get problems
Oh,
like
yeah,
that. So
and that's where we were.
Yeah.
Right before you got here, that's where
Yeah.
we were, and so,
Talking that.
I know a lot of things have changed, I know you're working on redoing the entire
Yeah.
zoning bylaw, which would be great, but there were so many opposing
Yeah.
bylaws that, depending on which one you know as good as anyone. Depending on which one you read is the one they're gonna go with, you know, and I think.
grading.
Yeah,
I thought it was
exactly.
WRPD.
No, the grading argument that the planning board, no.
Yeah. But anyway, so,
I know,
When
that's
I-
why I stopped.
Yeah.
whenever I ask for anything like that.
Yep.
I'm really only trying to find, ways to have an impact.
Absolutely.
So, Mark, the question is, could the EDC be more of a consultative group to those that are coming into Walpole and don't know how this town operates, maybe haven't done this before, and we ask them some questions like, have you worked with a civil engineer yet? What type of a site plan do you have? Because if we already know what the zoning board of appeals is looking for, and this person is going in without that information, if we get to them first, maybe we can help them start the process to be a little smoother than it would have been. And if it's not a civil engineer, it could be another type of expert they need, maybe a lawyer, I don't know. But just having experienced this process a little bit myself, I think a little bit more consultation sometimes in the beginning could help someone who hasn't done this before.
Especially in the
that-
small
that
business
could
side,
be-
like
What do
downtown,
you think about
totally
that?
agree.
Especially
that's
how
No one knows where to go
everyone's town
first.
is so different, so if
That's
you,
part
just
of it.
because you've
Correct.
set up somewhere else
Yeah,
doesn't,
I-
yeah, it's, makes
think
it
that's
very
a-
I
difficult.
mean, people
Good
talk to
idea.
you anyway, right? If they're thinking of
They
coming
do
into
talk
town.
to us. I mean, typically the process is if someone does reach out, and if they are already looking into doing something, it's not so much they're thinking about it, but
Right.
hey, this is what's happening. Depending on the project, if it's a larger scale project where it's gonna be new development, we will have a department review meeting beforehand, and that's something that I'll work with, our building commissioner in terms of setting up. And that's usually kind of like the first stop for any sort of newer, larger, development that may have to go through, site plan review, meeting with department heads beforehand, so before they even apply, they already have those initial concerns that a department like the fire department, health department, and conservation, those initial concerns are already factored into how their project is going to be.
How many times after that do they end up doing something in Foxborough or somewhere else? I'm being facetious.
No, in those situations, they are already mostly coming here. It's not like a matter of they're thinking about it. The people that do call and they're thinking about locations, those are the ones where you try to answer as many
Yeah,
questions as
no, I
possible,
understand.
set them in
And
the
I know
right
you do that.
direction. No, it's just, yeah.
It's just, again, not to reiterate, but sometimes I feel like we're getting a little bit stale, and I'm trying to keep that from happening, because, take John and Brian as an example. I mean, if you guys are busy, you're important to both your businesses and to the towns you live in. You're an asset to the board, and I don't think that we're doing enough to keep you necessarily interested all the time. And that's not a bad thing, I'm just saying
I
that,
disagree. My problem with bandwidth, it's not interest. I
Yeah.
actually love the board. I learned a lot. And it's just bandwidth.
okay, well, I absolutely respect that. Sometimes I feel like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like, when was the last time we had a full board?
Fall. I mean, it probably-
January.
Was it January?
I think was it January or December? We had a big board meeting. February,
Yeah, it was December or January.
It was December or January. It might have been before, talking about the tax rates.
yeah.
That was a quick meeting, though. It was also online, and I know we've been trying to meet more in person, too, and,
I think in person's important.
yeah.
I don't know. It might be just me. I might just feel like that. But it feels like we're always fighting to have a quorum. It feels like,
This year, though, I feel like every first 3 months of the year is slow. And then after that, everything picks up. We're running the town meeting, tax rates,
yep,
zoning.
yep, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, but I hear you, though, Mark, and I think your idea is a great idea. I think it's just, we gotta,
Just how do you do it?
how do we do it? And so, me and Lauren are really gonna try to
Okay.
figure out that information that we can try to bring back to the board and how you wanna go with it.
Okay.
Both from a zoning standpoint and just even a marketing
And if you have any experience for next meeting on how other EDCs are tasked,
Yeah,
if you've heard or people, and even I can reach out to other towns and say, hey, look, we're having,
I can ask around.
Yeah.
I mean, my only other experience is over in Norwood, and that was a different board in terms of how they met and what their priorities were more focused around. It was a little bit around TIFs, I think. I mean, I don't know if it's changed, probably changed a little bit. I know Joe Collins I think Joe was meeting with them still. Steve Costello is the chair, but is Joe Collins their direct staff admin now?
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I was there with the director, I mean, we met to kind of provide an overview of what we were working on, and then it was also kind of a discussion of, I think, it was also in the mix of Moderna, and so that was kind of a process where discussion of that TIF with them, it almost kind of, it lended itself to like having BDC be
Yeah.
involved with that project. But I can ask around, see how other towns
just
do
to,
it.
and I know that
Yeah,
this is probably not gonna make everybody feel great, but I think if Moderna was coming to Walpole and the select board was meeting about, and whoever else was meeting about whether or not, what level of TIF they were gonna go to, or the entire planning process of trying to bring Moderna into Walpole, I don't think the EDC would get that invitation. That's what I'm trying to change. I think they would say to us, hey, here's what we're looking at, give us your opinion in a letter. And I don't think we would have any input of importance.
Yeah, I mean, all I can, I mean, just because I do have a ton of tips over in Norwood, that process is, it's all hands on deck from what I remember, from town admin, the
Should be.
Board of Selectmen, FinCom, EDC. It definitely wasn't solely one group
Well, the
leader.
TIF that happened here with Siemens
Yep,
happened behind the curtains. Very few boards and committees even knew that it was happening until it was done. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say
Gotcha.
is, you know, we do have some pretty good people, we have some input, and we have to try to find a way to prove that to people so we can be more impactful. That's all.
absolutely.
Patrick, just a question for you. What type of relationship do you have with the commercial brokers in this area? Is it a common thing? Like you see Dan Waldman's name up on everything and
It's really if someone approaches me and asks a question about something.
so would it ever make sense, and maybe it's the EDC, to have some sort of a reception for area commercial brokers to have a conversation about, here are our open properties, here's why we think Walpole's a great place, keep us in mind? Because I know
that.
Dan's the one who sold our building, and ironically, he sold it to another realtor who's a residential realtor.
When you say here's our properties, list of properties that Walpole owns that are for sale? or
So,
just-
yeah, well, Dan sold the Walpole Mall for 80 million
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 months ago. His name's on Route 1A next to, I think, Ace Hardware. When
Nice
anything-
guy, too.
Anything that goes up in that
So,
mall is Dan.
I think it's
Or
kinda-
Atlantic Properties.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I know the guys over there. But I'm just thinking,
I think if we were
is that
to
a
look,
way to go to try to get more
I think it's an
of a
idea.
relationship? So
Yeah,
that
I
they
think,
think about Walpole when their client says, we're looking for space in this eastern Mass area.
if we wanted to try to have it in a similar event, like maybe a more casual discussion, like kind of like the business forum in a sense, but geared towards commercial real estate.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I talked to the Icon pickleball tennis guy.
Yeah.
This is hysterical. I mean, first of all, he's built like an NFL lineman. He's absolutely huge, and he's stringing tennis rackets and selling pickleball rackets. Super nice guy, Stanford undergrad, MIT grad, brilliant. And I said, what are you doing next to Family Pizzeria in Walpole? He goes, where's the next closest place to buy a tennis racket other than Dick's? I said, Newton? He goes, yep. And he goes, what's one town over? I go, Kingsbury? Yep. Wimbledon 109, around the corner. So that mall, that location fit for him demographically and geographically.
Yeah.
And he found it on his own,
Yeah.
you know, and went through the process. But it's an interesting example because he just opened up. And so we've got a lot of small spaces like that that are crumbs, but when the crumbs add up, they add up to something significant. But in that case, I just wonder, a better relationship with a realtor, a commercial realtor, maybe that happens faster. Because they're thinking about this town geographically.
And he found
Yeah.
that on his own, you said?
I don't know if his realtor helped him or not, I didn't dig that deep into it.
But when that realtor brings that tenant or buyer here,
Right.
you need to make sure the zoning and the process is somewhat easy for them, somewhat.
Well,
That's the
so, yeah, but, and so Dan went through the process of what we just went through, so he has that to remember. But Atlantic Properties is huge here too. Those are the two big names you see.
Yeah.
So even if it's something as simple as,
It may even be nice to even, maybe I talked to you, maybe we try to reach out to them and even have them come to a meeting to describe what's their process in terms of trying to market.
if you go to Dan's website, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
He has everything he's got for sale, from Plainville and Attleboro to everywhere.
Yeah.
But yes, to have a guy like that come in might make some sense.
okay.
And
Do you
Atlantic
think people
Properties-
go to his website when they're looking for properties?
Yes,
He sends out a monthly or weekly email letter.
he's got newsletters,
I look at
he's
it.
marketing like crazy.
See, to me, I would want to piggyback on that marketing. And whenever someone looks at his website, there's something up in the corner that says, come to Walpole, you know, blah, 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 here it is.
I'm sure he'll sell you some space.
Yeah. Or even have it linked
He
to
does
our
a good-
website.
Back to the original point, I don't think we could do as good a job as the brokers, their full-time job, and they literally get paid on sales. Yeah. They,
Although that's now changing.
what?
Oh,
right,
yeah.
not 6% anymore.
Commissions for
Oh,
realtors?
I know, yeah, more commercial still.
Oh, my God. Half the industry's gonna go away.
I know.
But I do think there's something about the commercial realtor that needs to understand Walpole better so that maybe some of their clients, he's putting properties in front of them that he wasn't, or he or she isn't doing now.
Yeah.
I think we
I
also
like
need to
that.
start off by finding out what the reasons are, if there are any,
Ask him,
right? No, I'm agreeing with you.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea, talking to more or less somebody they're doing it on a day-to-day basis, and so it's like, do you,
They're the expert.
exactly.
Pick their brain.
Because then that helps dictate how we would want to go, I think. You know, it's like if marketing is an issue, it's like, all right, maybe we do need to really incentivize having that standalone marketing page that we can point people into. But if they're like, you know, the uses are better over here in Norwood because I can do that, and that, and you
Right,
can't
I
do
mean, I
that
think
here,
we
then
might
we know
find
how to
out some-
change our zoning.
I think we
Yeah.
might find out some interesting information.
Yeah.
You know, like, and again, I am making this up off the top of my head, so it has no indication of any fact. But just talking to a person like that, he might say, oh, yeah, well, I would bring retail to Walpole, but I would never bring a restaurant.
Yeah.
Because they make it too hard, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? That might be something we don't know, but should know,
Correct.
you know? So I think it's, if we tried to put something like that together, it might be worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can talk into that and
Saturday.
see if we can plan something. Do you want to have that as
I don't know it. I'm the.
a board meeting, or would you want to have that as an event, or just kind of see?
Think about it.
Yeah.
Could you just invite him to the business forum? Might be interested if he's representing tenants on,
Ballpark.
Yeah, I mean,
Across from Red Wing
he
Diner.
hasn't already seen it.
I'm sure he might be busy, but
Who's the buyer?
open it up.
Give him a call. What are you doing next Thursday at 7 in the morning?
It might be interesting
Then,
to maybe,
Not on microphone.
yeah, get him to the point, and I don't know him at all, I've never met him, but
Yeah.
get him to the point where he's the focus.
Mhm.
You know, hey, we would like to glean your expertise
Okay.
in one of our meetings to tell us why or why not Walpole. And have him tell us. And say,
Sure, and why the surrounding towns? or
Right,
why
we want
not?
to improve, how do we improve Walpole for your clients?
Yeah.
And I think he'd
That's
be,
a good idea.
I think he'd be interested in coming in and telling us, you know? And then if we can affect outcomes in that situation, now we're doing something, you know, to help a very prominent person bring potential Walpole businesses in, because now that perceived roadblock is taken down a little bit.
No,
So I would love to get him to even maybe come to a meeting and have that be the focus. What don't we know? Tell us what we don't know.
No,
No, he's in Newton?
it sounds about right. His numbers on every sign in town,
Yeah.
so.
Gotcha.
It's usually easy to get a hold of a broker.
Yeah,
They want you.
they answer the phone.
Yeah.
All right, good. So
Absolutely.
do you want to reach out, or should I reach out to him, or what do you
I can
think?
reach out. I mean,
To Dan?
Yeah.
Use one of us, we have a personal issue.
Oh, you
All right. I don't mind reaching out to Dan.
have a relationship with him?
I've never done business with him, but he calls me and I can call him, good guy.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
cool.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
So you understand what we're looking for then, you know, what
So
don't,
when is the April meeting? Is it, let's see
oh,
here. April
19th?
the 16th?
Yeah, it's the 16th.
When is my term, do I actually, is that my last meeting next meeting?
I'd have to look into it. I forgot. I thought
Dan's
this was
coming,
the last
I'll
one.
still come. to
I
that
gotcha.
meeting.
Yeah.
do we, if he can come,
Yep.
I know we have the option, the public has an option to come to our meetings at any time.
Mhm.
Do we let the public know that he's gonna be at the meeting and why? And maybe some people might wanna come in and just listen? Or do we just keep it the way it is?
Might be a good way to like see who might be interested in joining the board.
Yeah.
Or who might be looking
idea.
to sell a building
Yeah. Get some
that we
free
don't know
advice.
about,
Yeah.
You know, I'm just thinking that, again,
which would make it interesting for him because he might be getting a prospect out of the deal.
And it makes it definitely interesting. Yeah.
I mean, I would never put that out there.
Wouldn't promise it.
Yeah, but I would,
Theory.
I mean, we would advertise it as we would any other public meeting. But if it is confirmed for the 16th, maybe, you know, we have a listing of people that attended the business forum. Maybe that's also that to notify about
Yeah.
EDC events and
Yeah.
EDC meetings,
All right,
so.
think about that, but definitely I'd like to get him in
Put a calendar
regardless.
as well if you
Yeah.
do.
All right, anything else?
That is all.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?